Okay, class, so I welcome you back to another important lecture. And for the previous classes, we were done at what immunity is, what the primary immune response is, what the secondary immune response is. And for the today's lecture, we would be seeing that what vaccination is and how come the vaccination can prepare our body for the future safety so that prior to the entry of the pathogen into my body naturally, my body should already be prepared. So you see that in 2019, by the end of that, the world it suffered from the pandemic of the COVID, and you see it caused a chaos in the world. And every one of you, I mean most of you, you may have got vaccinated. Okay? So what the vaccinations are? These vaccinations, they are basically the chemical preparations, and these chemical preparations they are injected into your body to induce immunity to any of the infectious diseases. And you would be surprised that these vaccines they have got the harmless pathogens in them. Okay, so whenever you were vaccinated, so every time the doctors they were intentionally putting the pathogens into your body, but these pathogens they did not cause any harm because we add these pathogens into the vaccines by either killing them or by either making these pathogens weak. And when I would make the pathogens weak so that they are not able to grow or divide in the body, so such vaccines they are referred to as the attenuated vaccines. The other approach is that instead of putting an entire pathogen into the vaccine, I would only add their antigen into the vaccine. And when we would add the antigen into their vaccine, so this basically mean that my lymphocyte would bind with these antigens only and they would initiate an immune response in them. And if we want to understand is that how come we can administer the vaccine, so we can take them orally, we can inhale them through the nasal cavity, or this can also be given with an injection. So simply the vaccines they are injected to enhance the immunity, and in the vaccines we have either got these pathogens in the killed form, in the attenuated form, or in some cases, we just add the fragments of the pathogens. Now, the idea is that how come these vaccines, once we have administered into the body, they would work. So you see here we have this syringe, and in the syringe we have got this vaccine having dead attenuated or the part of the pathogen in it, and we have injected it into the person. Now, after we have injected into the person, what would happen? That the lymphocyte whose shape of the protein receptor would be complementary to these antigens, they would bind with them. And once they would bind with them, so what they do is that they would start to be producing the antibodies out of them. Okay, so here you see that the lymphocytes have started to produce antibodies, and these antibodies they would eliminate all of those pathogens that were administered into your body with the help of an injection. At the same time, what would happen that these activated lymphocytes they would also make the memory cells as well, and this is what we actually require that my body should develop some memory cells. So later in life, when you actually get the pathogen into your body, so my body should already remember it or should already be knowing them so that the immune response initiated against them should be very much strong. Now it so happens is that later in life, like when you would get the actual pathogen in your body, so these memory cells they would be produced and they would start producing the antibodies faster. And when they would start producing the antibody faster, so even we would have the entry of the pathogen and we would actually not realize it. Why? Because my body initially had made the memory cells by the injection of the vaccine, and now we are safe from any attack of the pathogen. If I were to show you the diagram, so here you see this is a time frame that we have got, and this is a number of the antibodies that we have developed in the blood. Like if I were to say that you got vaccinated for the measles, so when you got vaccinated, so you actually did not have the measles ever in your life before. So by the vaccination, the number of the antibodies produced in the primary immune response is less. Why we are producing less number of the antibodies after the vaccination? Because in the vaccine we actually added very small number of the pathogens, so high number of antibody production is not required. The time passes by, and at some point you actually get the infection, like the measles actually get into your body. So the memory cells, they would produce a very large amount or a huge amount of these antibodies, and that is thanks partly to these vaccines that they produce the memory cells in us. And then later those memory cells, they gave a high production of the antibodies, and that would save you from the actual attack of any of the pathogens, and in this case it was the measles. Now here we come toward the end of the lecture, and earlier we have said that the immunity can be primary and the secondary, but here we have to be talking about that how many type of the immunities we have got. So the immunity has further two subtypes, like we have this active immunity coming with us, and we have this passive immunity coming with us. Whenever the word active is coming along with immunity, what we need to realize is that there is an entry of the pathogen. And when we say passive immunity, so by the word passive immunity, what we mean is that there is no entry of the pathogen, but rather than there has been entry of the antibodies in your body. Now, the active immunity that we have got, so this means that the pathogen is entering into your body, so it can be either natural active immunity. And by the natural active immunity, what we mean is that the pathogen has entered naturally by the direct or the indirect contact, or you have eaten some contaminated food or the water, or if you have inhaled some air droplets that had the pathogen in them. So my body would get natural active immunity. And when we say artificial active immunity, so we mean that the pathogen did not enter naturally, intentionally we injected it into the body. So whenever we would be enhancing or inducing the artificial active immunity in the body, so this is achieved by the vaccine, where the pathogen would be there in the vaccine preparation, and once you have injected it, so intentionally you have got the pathogens in your body. So this would be the artificial active immunity. No matter if the active immunity is natural active or artificial active, there would be entry of the pathogen or the antigen into your body, and this would provide long-term immunity. Why? Because your body would trigger the formation of the memory cells or the memory B cells, and they would keep the track of the pathogen. So later in life, if you would come across the same pathogen, your body would already be prepared. Moving onward, now comes another thing, and that is the passive immunity. In the passive immunity, there is entry of the antibodies, antigen would not enter. And again, it can take the form of natural passive immunity or artificial passive immunity. By the natural passive immunity, you see that if there is a mother and that mother is feeding her infant with the breast milk, so in the breast milk there would be the antibodies coming, and those antibodies, they would provide the protection to the infant from the infectious diseases. Why? Because infant at the very beginning of the life is not able to bring into play its own immune response, but rather than it would rely on the antibodies that are entering from the mother's body with the help of the milk. Now, the other thing is artificial passive immunity. Like it's the same way, like there is a person and he got recovered from a disease, so for sure he would have the antibodies in his blood plasma. And you get to know that there is another person in the hospital and he himself is not getting recovered from that disease. So what I would gonna do is that the person who has just recovered, I would request him that out of your blood plasma, I need to take antibodies because I have to save the life of the person who is not able to himself recover out of the disease. So whenever we take the antibodies from one person and then when we inject it into another person whose own immune system was not able to make the antibodies, so in this way again you see the antigen is not entering in artificial passive immunity, but the antibodies are entering. So this would be artificial passive immunity. Okay, but the issue with the passive immunity is that we don't make memory cells. This is the same way as if someone provide me with some ammunition to be fighting against enemies, so I would not have a need of manufacturing my own. So likewise, if we would give the body the antibodies, like preformed antibodies, so my body would not be in the need of making the memory cells out of it. So that is why we say that wherever the passive immunity is, no matter this is natural or this is artificial passive immunity, so no memory cells are being formed, so it would not be long term. For a time being, The antibodies would save this infant, and the antibodies that we got from another person, so it would save that particular person for some time, but later he would be at the verge of getting the same pathogen again and he would develop the disease. So this means that at any cost, the active immunity is far more beneficial to the body in terms of making the memory cells. Passive immunity is an advantage in terms of saving the life of a person at a particular time. But later, if he gets the disease again and if he is not recovering himself, then again we have to be injecting him with the antibodies. So I hope you would be clear with this concept. So see you in the next class.